Let's bring in Fast Money friend Gene Munster with Deepwater Asset Management. Gene, good to have you with us. You know, you've said on past shows it's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it comes to a ban on TikTok. So if you are of that belief, do you think that when that day does come, whenever it does come, that there will be ramifications? Are you looking at Apple any differently? Are you thinking that there should be some risk embedded in the multiple because of this possibility of just retaliatory action?
I can say this, is that Tesla and Apple and Nike, they were all pinned to this 5.5 hours of hearing today. It wasn't just people who were interested in Meta and TikTok. And I think that there is a piece here. And I think Tim hit it right on. There are two topics today. One was related to the hearing. The hearing was intense. It was 5.5 hours of TikTok bashing, bipartisan. Haven't seen anything like it in 30 years. And then there's the political piece to it. This gets to your point, Melissa, about what some of these other companies are. And today was largely theater. The reality is this is much bigger than TikTok. This is about U.S.-China relations. And a banning of TikTok is going to be negative for U.S.-China relations. I think it will intensify some of the separation that's there. And Biden administration, it's unlikely that they want to pursue that right now. That's why they've been talking about this sale. And so my sense is that we have some time here. I think that Biden is going to, the administration is going to want to allow TikTok to remain available, at least till we get some cooling down. A lot has happened in the last 2 months between U.S. and China. And so, yes, is the answer to your question, is that did, as I was just processing, I'm embarrassed to admit, I watched 5.5 hours of this today. It was that riveting. And at the end of it, as I was just putting my thoughts together, it came up, what does this mean for Tesla, Nike, Apple?
Gene, it's Karen. Let me ask you something. As this TikTok sort of groundswell has continued and Meta has gone up, maybe not just Meta, but how much do you think is now priced in for the possibility of TikTok being banned and the benefit that would accrue to?
Definitely would be. I don't think it's fully priced in. We're shareholders of Meta, and we think it's going to happen, but we don't think it's priced in at this point. How much? I think that there's probably 10% upside. Keep in mind, over the last year, there's been 4 issues that Meta stock has faced. One of them has been concern that TikTok is going to be kind of snip Meta's growth for the next few years. And so I think that's a big deal. That's a sleep well at night, knowing that investors don't have to worry about TikTok. I would say this, too. I mentioned some of the companies, some of the other big tech companies, but this is not just all good for Meta either. Is that if you, as you watch this, you see there is a huge concern about the addictive and dangerous aspects of short-term format video in social media. That's Reels as well. And so I think that, well, this seems to be a clear benefit in the near term, which I don't think it's priced in, but we're going to see changes. I mean, I think it's getting to a point where now, whenever you see bipartisan, I mean, that's a sign that something real is happening here, that there is going to be some changes. And I think the spotlight, when it gets banned, I think it's a function of time. When TikTok gets banned, I think that Meta will come back in the spotlight and have to answer some of the same questions that TikTok was trying to get asked today.
Hey, Gene, while we have you, separate some of these geopolitics and what it could mean for a discount rate on a company. But while we have you, we're talking about mega cap tech outperforming the S&P by a massive amount, the re-rating on a relative basis of mega cap tech. Your sense on valuations, and I look at Apple within 10% of an all-time blow-off high, leaving China aside with demand pull forward, a very different equity environment. What are you thinking about this move?
So, I mean, Apple specifically, I'm still optimistic. I still think that there is upside here, in part because, you know, we have, yes, potentially some demand pulled forward, but there's been some demand pushed out as well because of some of these, some of the economic piece. And so I think you're going to see a strong cycle in the back half of the year. I think there's other categories that Apple can get into. I'm still, yes, there's geopolitical risk with Apple, but I'm still optimistic. I think this can be, the stock can go much higher.
Gene, thanks. Gene Munster of
you.
Deepwater. You got to wonder, you know, an operator like a Starbucks, they have a loyalty program here in the United States. They have a lot of customer data. Apple, too. Whenever you make a purchase, they have all your information. How is that data stored in China? And what is the view of China? You know, they can easily say, point the finger back at us and say, look what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
if you're going to do this to us.
For sure. And so that rhetoric continues to get ratcheted up. And then what's the next, what happened? And again, we don't even talk about China, Taiwan, but what happens if something there? What is the hands get forced of these U.S. multinationals that have put so much into the whole China story? And I don't know, again, 15%, 20% in our business, we call that tail risk. But it's, in my opinion, it's not being priced in at all.